Haruna Mohammed, let me start with you. Do you concede from what we heard there from your former Deputy Finance Minister, somebody the president actually thought in his second term to give him another position, elevate him to the position of Minister of State of the Finance Ministry? He says that you, together with other governments before you, have run the economy like a Ponzi scheme. But very specifically, on the subject of the current economic crisis, his verdict is that it is not only because of Ukraine and the pandemic. Quote, it is also because of bad politics and economic mismanagement. You agree?
I don't think what you have just read is a true representation of what he meant. He said the problems are a cumulative effect of many decades of problems spanning different governments. That is as a result of bad politics and economic mismanagement. So many decades is a very key word. He was not specific on the NPP government. He was writing on a general statement. And when it came to the current crisis, what he's talked about, he related it to the cycle of change relative to the 8-year periods that people or Ghanaian citizens have always come to stay with. And also touching on the breaking of the aid. He said breaking of the aid is something that is possible. However, our meeting with the hostile external factors has imposed hardship on our chances. So these were the meaty part of what he said, which was not directly that it comes to government.
And you should listen to him when I asked him to focus on the last 7.5 years, because that's when he was part of government. And Sammy Jimfi is on. I'll ask him about how this applies to them. But I have you on. The same questions I asked him in that interview, which we'll play later tonight. I'm asking you that as far as your 7.5 years is concerned, do you concede that bad politics and economic management has been your bane?
I don't think that for the past 7 years we have had any bad economic management. He himself in his piece has admitted with regards to the external factors that has affected. And if you check the performance of this government from 2017 to 2020, before the global crisis, you would see that the economy of this country was growing up to 8-point-something%. And then you check all the indicators, they were in form. And as at now that we stand, if you check the recovery of the economy as at first quarter of this particular year, you will see that the economy had grown about 4.7%. The indicators are very clear. Inflation is coming down. Interest rates are coming down. The economy is turning the corner and things are beginning to change. So it is very clear that this government has managed the economy very well to a period that there was economic crisis. Even in the world, countries were recording negatives of growth.
Kwekwe disagrees. And yes, he talks about all governments, including yours. And he says, as far as the economy is concerned, you've all run it like a Ponzi scheme.
You see, where he mentioned the Ponzi scheme, it is relative to how interest rate, how we lend, how we borrow, how we pay back, and how we cut parts of these particular loans that we borrow to pay off and use others too. And this was relative to the governance of all the political parties within the history,
including.
He was very clear. He was very clear.
Yes, that's true. Clear. But and it's including your party, because you are in government now, 7.5 years.
About the particular government.
Yes,
so
but including your government, and you should listen to him when I speak to him. We come to the party at 9 p.m. He admits that yes, he's guilty. He doesn't shift blame at all. He says, I've been part of the problem. You were saying, as the Deputy General Secretary of the NPP, that your government having run the economy like a Ponzi scheme, as your former Deputy Finance Secretary.
If you look at the loans that we have come to meet, look at the take or pay. We have gone to revise the interest rate at which payment has been made. And when you read his piece, he tells you that you go and borrow from one and come and use part of the money to pay high interest rates. And our government, in terms of this particular Nana Akufo-Addo government, has made sure that interest rate, borrowing at high interest rate has not been a factor at all. We have to renegotiate some of these particular facilities to be able to reduce the payment. So, yes, it is true that he has made that particular statement, but we have been very careful. Remember, he was part of the government earlier on, and he might have made these particular suggestions to government, and some of the loans that were taken by the previous government have been revised so that we will make sure that payment of interest does not affect the principal.
Do I take it that as far as
higher rates at which the government some of this interest?
As far as you're concerned, the Ponzi scheme analogy does not apply to the last 7.5 years?
And the Ponzi scheme does not also apply to the current government.
Well, that's exactly the question I'm asking you, that your position is that it doesn't apply to the current government.
Yes, and that is the position of the paper.
Well, his point
is the position of the paper he presented.
No, that's not the position of the paper. His point is that all governments, including your government, have run this as a Ponzi scheme.
Now, so the Ponzi scheme is not related to this government alone. He's
exactly
talking
the
about
point.
the running of the economy.
Let me ask you, finally, before I bring in Sambi Jemfi. He says, quote, and this is directly to you and your party. He says, to break the eight, therefore, we, and he's talking about you, the NPP, must first break the norm by doing the following. One, acknowledging the past and present failures. Are you ready to acknowledge the past and present failures?
We have always done that. We have always acknowledged the past failures, and we have always identified the shortfalls in terms of how some of the indicators are being worked out because of external factors. We have always adopted deep and far-reaching reforms to address some of these decades of problems, and that is why the current finance minister has always made sure that monthly he has to address the press to ensure and put out the change in indicators, the policy statements, how the economy is going to be run. We have always made sure that we lead by example, and that is why His Excellency the President cut the expenditure in terms of payment of salaries and payment of emoluments to the president, the vice president. He has also reduced in terms of fuel payments to members of parliament and other CEOs and what have you. He has reduced some of the expenditure cuts. And that is why His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia says that when he comes, the capital expenditure that is put on infrastructure will be leaned back to private enterprises to be able to provide hostel facilities, to be able to take up road infrastructure, whereby we would have to give them the incentive to take loans on low interest rates so that they can support government. The money that government would have used to go into some of this building infrastructure will be used to provide other amenities that will support state development.